We are the Murder of Crones, and we like to look at the patriarchy through a intersectional feminist lens. And I'm your host, Zabrina.
And I'm Jen.
And I'm Kori.
So today we will be telling a tale about a Hungarian countess who is arguably one of the most prolific killers of her time. She was accused of murdering up to 650 people, bathing in their blood, and cutting out the hearts of her lovers. Welcome to the Murder of Crones, the Blood Before the Bath, Halloween edition.
Okay.
Terrifying.
Okay.
So what do you guys think?
I like it. Off kilter, on point. I like it.
Guys, what does that mean?
No, seriously, what does it mean? So today we're going to discuss the truths, myths, and folklore around the remarkable case of Elizabeth Bathory. And in English, her name is pronounced Elizabeth. So moving forward, we're going to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Much easier.
Yeah. The Hungarian names in here are
mean-
really throwing me for a tongue twister.
I would
Mhm.
try out of respect, but Elizabeth
Yeah.
works.
Well, I'm not going to try out of respect.
Perfect.
Yes, Okay, so Elizabeth Bathory entered the world on August 7th, 1560, in Nyírbátor, Hungary, a child of two of the most powerful Protestant families in Central Europe. Historians such as Kimberly Craft and Tony Thorne both noted that her parents were first cousins. Her father, Baron George Bathory of Eched, ruled vast estates in Transylvania. Her mother, Anna Bathory, was the niece of Stephen Bathory, who would become King of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania. Elizabeth was educated far beyond most women of her time. She excelled at math and was fluent in Latin, German, Hungarian, and Greek, an accomplishment usually reserved for noble sons. In modern times, she would have most likely been referred to as a tomboy. She learned things like fencing and horsemanship, and she apparently liked to wear men's clothing. As you can imagine, this would have been very uncommon or unheard of for this time period.
She was
So,
a Renaissance woman.
Historical records show letters written later by family associates mentioning her suffering from fits or falling sickness, what modern readers might recognize as epilepsy. She is said to have endured violent mood swings and fainting spells, a detail later woven into stories of her temper and cruelty. Now, I looked into what some of the consequences of incest might be, and sure enough, epilepsy was one of them.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's kind of ringing true. Also, that era it was quite common, right?
Yeah.
Marry
Well, and also
within your
like
family.
she's from a fairly noble house, and so it was much more common in the upper classes, right? Like where they wanted to keep the power and the bloodlines because they believed they were
Yeah.
actually a sort of more superior lineage. So they would only
Mhm.
marry within their circles. So it's probably multiple generations, not just her parents, but they are probably the result of at least somewhat incestuous relationships. But also I wonder about her seizures, her anger and her rage also really hits me as like head injury. We see people that have a traumatic brain injury that can, like seizures
Mhm.
can be a side effect, but also bouts of
Right.
rage, like a flipped personality,
Mhm.
a really temper switch. So,
That makes total
Interesting.
that
sense.
like, would they have noted like head injury for a kid? Like she could have fallen out of an apple tree or something, right?
Well, just the seizures alone, right? I mean, if they were
Yeah.
grand mal seizures, she'd be bouncing her head all over the place.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If the epilepsy
Yeah.
was natural and then gave her a head injury, she's fallen down.
Mhm. So folklore claims,
the incest, I mean, the incest is undeniable. I mean, that's
Yeah.
gonna mess
Yeah.
her up real good.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
sure. Narrow genetic pools.
okay, so folklore claims there were rumors that she had a peasant lover as a teenager and became pregnant. No one knows what became of the baby, but some say the boy was castrated as punishment. I also read that they took his body parts and fed them to wolves, and one account and another said to dogs. So,
Hmm.
yeah, they were doing some fun things on the family estate.
I also read that he might have sexually assaulted her, that it wasn't consensual. Although I'm
Oh,
assuming she also would have been highly motivated to say, you know, like it's really hard to judge at this time.
For
yeah, for
sure.
Absolutely.
sure.
There was no concept of consent, but also any girl that is caught with an indiscretion is highly motivated to be like, I didn't,
Lie.
wasn't me.
Yep.
Yeah, especially with
Yep.
a
Oh,
peasant that
yeah.
has no power, right? And if
Mhm.
she's
Hmm.
not she's not showing up to be a very upright, honest woman. So
Mhm.
false
Mhm.
True.
allegations don't seem beneath her.
So now it's time to introduce Ferenc Nadasti. For ease, moving forward, we will call him Francis. That's his Hungarian name translated into English. So Francis was the teenage heir of another powerful Hungarian family. Elizabeth married Francis in 1575. She was 15 and he was 20. Now, there are differing opinions on ages there. I saw one that said she was 13 and so on and so forth. So, but this is what we'll say for today, that she was 15 and he was 20. The wedding was a grand affair attended by the highest of Hungarian nobility. Francis took his wife's name, Bathory, recognizing her lineage as the more powerful of the two. As the couple settled into the estate, Elizabeth's beauty and poise were celebrated across Hungary, but women who wielded power, especially one as educated and commanding as Elizabeth, made an easy target for envy and fear. Quote, the
Mhm.
same society that feared witches revered noblemen for their cruelty. A woman's ambition was always suspect. End quote. Source, Dr. Irma Sadicki, Hungarian Historical Review, 2017. Marriage made Elizabeth the mistress of vast lands. Her new husband, Count Francis, soon earned the name the Black Hero of Hungary for his merciless campaigns against the Ottoman Turks. When he rode to battle, he ruled his castles. When he returned, he brought stories of siege and cruelty that mirrored the brutality of the age. Quote, he was said to impale prisoners, slice them open with his sword for sport, and teach his men to sharpen cruelty as if it were a virtue. End quote. Source, Laszlo Nagy, The Blood Countess of Hungary, 1895. Historical records show that Francis was often away for years at a time, leaving Elizabeth in charge of multiple estates. Local folklore talks about Frances teaching her new forms of punishment to discipline the staff, how to roll a strip of oil paper and put it between the maid's fingers or toes and set it alight, how to smear honey on a servant and let the insect find her in the courtyard. There are
Hmm.
reports of him giving her a clawed glove, cut, slash, and stab victims. No document proves this, yet the tale persists in rural Hungarian legend. He discouraged his wife from killing servants. It wasn't good for the overall look of the family. He preferred to torture them and let them live.
Hmm.
During these years, Elizabeth had 5 children. They were raised partly by governesses, while their mother managed estates and their father waged war. Reports say that Elizabeth was a loving, devoted mother to her children. She had a reputation helping the needy in her community, too.
It's pretty
She seems like
contradictory.
quite the contradiction,
Yeah.
doesn't she?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Well, unless
Yeah.
you're sociopathic enough to be like,
Yes.
I must keep a good appearance. I mean, a lot of like
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
horrible people
true.
can be extremely loyal to their family. So like her being a good mother doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily
it's true.
Yeah.
strike me as false, but like giving to charity, taking care of the people in her community, like
Yeah.
caring after the peasants, does not seem in line with what we're
Keeping
seeing, unless
appearances
it's
up.
for,
No.
yeah, exactly,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
for like
Yeah.
smoothing
For the
over.
meantime.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so neighbors began to murmur of disappearances. A maid dismissed, a servant who fell ill and was never seen again. The murmurs were not accusations, only uneasy gossip. In a society where nobles held the power of life and death over peasants, cruelty was common, and witnesses were silent. It was said that it was common for Elizabeth or her servants to strip girls of their clothing and torture them. She would torture them by whipping their hands and feet up to 500 times in a row. If a girl ironed her clothing
Mhm.
wrong, she would put the iron to her face, permanently disfiguring her. If she sewed her clothing wrong, she would put needles under her fingernails.
Brutal.
Have you ever had anything
Whew.
like a sliver under your fingernail or anything?
Sliver,
Oh, it
yeah.
hurts
Hurts
so
so
bad.
bad.
I just can't even
Yeah.
imagine. Like, this is absolutely
No.
horrifying. In fact, I was having nightmares after
Yeah.
after sort of researching this podcast. I
Yeah.
had a nightmare. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, and from the accounts I read, that these servants were quite young. They were quite young girls. Like,
Mhm.
they were
Yeah.
between like
They
10
would
and
have been.
14, I
Yeah.
believe.
Oh,
Yeah, like
Can you imagine how
just
terrified
like,
they would be?
whew, yeah, bit
yeah.
disturbing
Yeah.
actually.
And yeah, can you
It is
imagine
the
the
Halloween
murmuring in the
edition.
village
Yeah.
when a position comes open at the castle? You're like, why don't you go apply? You're
No,
like,
thank you.
I
You're
don't
like,
want to.
I don't,
I'm fine.
no, maybe not.
No, they
No,
didn't
Maybe
have
not.
a choice.
No, they
I
wouldn't have had
know.
a choice, would they have?
No.
You know?
I wonder if her children ever understood what was happening, or how they made sense of what was going on around them. Because that level of fear and intensity, and just the servants being so on edge, would be tangible.
Yeah, I feel like if this account is to be believed, the level of casual cruelty, I don't like it. I doubt it would have crossed her mind not to like hit the servants in front of her children, right? Like if she's doing things like oiled paper between their fingers and toes and lighting it on fire, or burning their face with
Mhm.
an iron, smacking them across the face, or kicking them or something if they've displeased her. Yeah, like
Although
when you
that's
see,
commonplace at that time, right? Like, the
it would have been.
punishments for anything were so extreme.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, like it's true. Like violence was very kind of casual and doled out without much thought to the, like the consequence, especially towards peasants. But
Mhm.
I do think I think about it in the case of like an abuser out in public with his partner, when you see, or like with their child, right? When you see them behaving in a way that you think is inappropriate out in public, what do they do behind closed doors, right? And so
Yeah.
I would feel
Yeah.
like if she is bothering to hide this from her children, the casual cruelty that they probably do witness, I mean, it would have been part of their daily life, right? I don't know. It would be
Yeah.
interesting to
Hmm.
see if they
So
turned out to
normal.
be decent people. Like, were they? Because also, it doesn't seem
Yeah.
like her husband was a prince either. He was a bit of a nightmare.
No.
Hmm.
Get it
Well,
twisted.
and I also wonder how much her kids were around, right? They were probably being raised in a
Mhm.
different castle, even, right? Like, because there isn't a
Yeah,
lot of
that's
mention of
possible.
them, other than that she was a
Different wing of the
good
castle.
mother. Yeah. So Francis died in January 1604, and the widowed countess inherited lands, castles, servants, and the loyalty of soldiers who had once served her husband. It was immense power for a woman of her era. Soon the whispers grew louder. The servants who once obeyed now trembled. The villagers who once bowed now crossed themselves as she passed. With her husband gone, no man stood above her. She was one of the most powerful widows in all of Hungary. I mean, that would be
Mhm.
problematic in itself, wouldn't it? Historical records
Mhm.
show letters from the surrounding towns that mention disappearances. Girls sent to serve in her household were not returning home. What had been murmurs in her husband's lifetime became fear in his absence. The local Lutheran minister, Esteban Madari, began to notice a pattern. Parents came to him quietly, asking if he had heard from their daughter. He wrote to the royal court in Vienna, urging investigation. Quote, "The cruelty of this widow is beyond all measure. The screams from her castle are heard across the fields." End quote. Source,
Mm,
letter of Esteban to Palatine of Hungary, circa 1602-1604, Hungarian State Archive. This is an actual
mm,
letter that they
mhm,
found on this, so that's kind of interesting. So folklore tells a
hmm.
tale about a servant girl who brushed Elizabeth's hair too roughly, pulling it by accident, and, in a rage, the Countess struck her across the face so hard that the girl's nose bled. She apparently ordered the girl killed so that she could bathe in her blood. The crown did nothing. She was a Bathory, after all. Between 1604 and 1608, the castle kitchens burned late into the night. New servants were brought from distant villages. When neighbors inquired, they were told the girl had gone home. But winter after winter, the number of graves on the hillside near Elizabeth's castle grew. The cruelty escalated from discipline to obsession. Witnesses would later claim that she devised intricate methods of torture. Red-hot pokers pressed to the face, lips, and genitals of girls. Iron tongs used to tear flesh off their bodies. Girls locked in cages so small they could neither sit nor stand. Naked victims forced to stand outside in snow while buckets of water froze upon their bodies. Quote, "I saw one girl beaten until the floor was slippery with her blood." End quote. Source, testimony of Dorothea Sentes, 1611.
So it doesn't sound like she wasn't hiding any of this. She was really blatant about it. If she's
Yeah.
got mass graves outside her castle, people can hear the screams of tortured beings. Like, she was pretty bold, if this were the case.
And it seems like once her husband was dead, he was the
Yeah,
one who was saying, don't kill the servants. We have to keep
yeah,
them alive, but like you can torture them. And she's
Yeah.
just like, or I could just kill them. She got
totally.
emboldened because
Yeah,
you kill a few by accident and you make up a good excuse and nobody questions you. And of course, the peasants have no authority to do anything about it other than maybe complain to the priest. So
mhm.
at some point she starts to feel like
Mhm.
I'm untouchable, right?
She blamed it on the
Yeah,
diseases
she
of the
did.
time.
I have to say, I was walking my dog this morning and we came across a cat that was torturing, and I mean torturing, a bird, just doing the cat thing and playing with it. I had a hard time with that.
Oh my gosh, right?
I'm not a huge cat fan, and I know this is what they do, but seeing it, and I just felt so bad for this little bird, and had to drag my dog away just get him away so I could get away from it. But
Mhm.
just the type of person it takes to be able to inflict that level of torture on somebody is really, really dark. Like, that's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
intense. You're so either, disassociated or psychologically fucked up
Oh,
Yeah.
to
yeah.
be able to do those sort of acts. Like, I can't even. Thank
Yeah, the
goodness I can't
detachment
even
from
imagine.
your human empathy is so broken,
Yeah,
right? That you could
yeah,
inflict that level of pain and harm on somebody else, right?
yeah. It's
Hmm.
wild.
So, an historical fact is that between 1604 and 1608, formal complaints started to multiply. Dozens of young women had vanished, yet the noble families hesitated to accuse a countess directly. The first signs of danger appeared when the daughters of minor nobility began to disappear. Families had sent them to Elizabeth's castle, not as servants, but as students of etiquette and courtly behavior. They were meant to be refined under the countess's supervision, but instead they vanished.
Shocker.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
So this is where the story of Elizabeth Bathory starts to take a turn. And I'm going to pick up the narrative. So it was really common at the time for local nobility, sort of lower status nobility, to send young daughters into higher status households so that they could be educated. It would give them advancements. Maybe they would have a chance to meet a handsome young soldier or something and marry well, right? This was a really strategic plan. So it was very common. And apparently Elizabeth opened basically sort of a school for girls, apparently, where she welcomed them in to like help them gain advancement. But of course, according to legend, that's not what she's doing with these
No.
poor girls, right? So,
Yeah.
but this is speaking, I think, to her either her decline in her mental health, like her cognition, like this is a wildly dangerous choice, right? It's one thing to kill peasants, but when you
Mhm.
start killing the daughters of some higher nobility, you're gonna raise some eyebrows, right? You're gonna catch
Yeah.
notice. So either she's mentally unwell or she just feels completely untouchable, that she's not been caught for the crimes to this date, and she just thinks nobody's ever going to catch her, right? So
And I think
Yeah.
that's classic with serial killers, isn't it? Where they just
yeah,
keep upping their ante and they keep it's like,
Mhm.
I dare you to catch me sort of thing. I'll push
Yeah.
yeah,
push it as far as I can. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
correct.
escalation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. The more they get away with, the more they push the boundaries to see how far they can take things.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
especially if Elizabeth has got accomplices in the castle with her, whether they are fearfully compliant or actually have a slightly sadistic side to themselves as well and enjoy this type of punishment, she's got people around her that are like probably helping her, encouraging her, making her normalize or helping her to normalize the behavior, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, um, so the rumor was that she was unsatisfied with the blood of the peasant girls. So the idea that she was bathing in their blood became sort of a common myth. I was going to say mythos around her. Whether or not
Mhm.
that's true, I'm sure Kori will be able to speak to it. But um, the motivation for upping her ante and going for noble girls was that apparently their blood would be better as a higher quality blood, right? So she would
Mhm.
take these girls and try
Mhm.
to get higher rejuvenation qualities from their blood, bathing in it.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So this is a problem, though.
Yeah.
Of
I'd
course,
say
families of
fairly
these
problematic.
daughters, yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, not a good hygiene routine. No.
No.
Could you imagine getting the blood out of your hair? Like you're just trying to like, oh, I can't.
Ugh,
Oh,
the
oh,
smell.
the
Oof.
clotting, like blood clotting. Oh, no,
Oh, gross.
all of
No.
it. I know,
No.
so gross.
Well,
Like it seems weird and kind of gothy and romantic until you actually think about it, and then you're like, no.
No. Nasty.
yeah,
Um,
no.
okay, so the local noble families who had more sway and more power and influence with the authorities um, started to like protest. And as you were saying, Zab, the outbreak of cholera or an accident, these
Mhm.
excuses don't wash anymore, especially with the numbers that um, are starting to appear, like the bodies that are disappearing, right? So it's said that as Elizabeth was deepening into her madness, she started to become more careless and reckless with how she disposed of the bodies of these girls.
Mm,
So she would toss some of her victims into her moat in the water, and
mm,
then they would get dragged out by animals and like be found in the countryside. She would also have peasants take them out into the forest and toss their bodies into the woods to be eaten by animals. But of course, people are finding bodies out there, right? So it becomes hard. Like if you're not even bothering to bury them,
yeah.
and I'm sure that if she is torturing them, the marks of what she is doing to them are on their bodies, right? You will be able to
Yeah.
see the
Yeah.
evidence of what
Oh,
she's
yeah.
doing.
It's not natural causes, that's for sure, right?
Yeah, you're like, it's
No.
weird. She died of a natural iron to the face. I don't know, like it's
Ugh,
Why are
gross.
there
not how
needles under
cholera
her
looked last
nails?
time I saw.
Ew.
Where are her genitals?
Yeah, she had blood in her body last time I saw her. I don't know. This is weird. So,
Oh, God.
eh, um, so after receiving 12 complaints about the goings on at the castle, so these complaints were from noble families complaining to the pastors and sending on their complaints to King Matthias II of Hungary, who was again like related to Elizabeth Bathory, right? He was her uncle, something in there. Um, he sent his highest judge. So the highest judge in Hungary, he would be the Palatine, right? So you mentioned that before. The Palatine is the person who would be in charge of sort of legal proceedings at the time. So of course, because they like the nobility held a lot of the power, they were all like inbred, interrelated families, right? So it just so happens that the Palatine in this case, whose name was Count Grigory Thurzo, he was actually Elizabeth Bathory's cousin. So he's in the family mix as it is, but he's assigned the job of investigating these accusations, right? So he brought 2 investigators with him, and I'm putting investigators in like I feel kind of like, you know, the witch trials where they investigated, right? So I feel like they might have been torturers, or like at
Yeah,
least
that would
like
make sense.
interrogators. Yeah, like I don't know that they're
Yeah.
doing investigating. So it was Moses Shriraki and Andras Karatsur. Oh my gosh, you guys, my Hungarian, so
Yeah.
bad. So bad. But Moses and Andras. So in the spring of 1610, they began to secretly interview the locals in the surrounding area. So they at this time weren't letting Elizabeth know that they were investigating. They were just kind of conducting interviews on the DL, right? So Moses and Andres, they say interrogated, which I'm like, what's
Tortured.
involved in an interrogation? Like, are you torturing the people or are you actually just gathering information at this point?
100%.
So
I don't think they
back
gathered information back then. I don't think that was a thing.
just especially when they're interrogating peasants, like they're like, I said,
Yeah.
tell me what happened. I mean, the peasants probably were terrified to testify against her anyway. Like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, right?
Yeah.
So
totally would not be going good for them no matter what's going on.
yeah, they're just like,
No.
do I testify against the serial killer in the castle up there that controls my life, or do I submit to trial? So they apparently
Although you would
interrogated.
Yeah, I was gonna say you would think someone would take her out, like just suicide mission, take her out, do yourself in, get it over with, right?
Yeah.
Save hundreds of lives.
Yeah.
You would think, although I don't think peasants, there was such belief that the nobility were there, like had religious backing, right? Like that God had positioned them in that. So I feel like that would have been their immortal soul on the line. So I think you'd rather die by torture than spend eternity in hell, right? If that was the consequence.
Yeah, makes sense.
So yeah. So anyway, they interrogated 52 people, apparently. That's my 5-2. They compiled the list of accusations includes that Elizabeth tortured, murdered, and even cannibalized her victims. So these were all secondhand accounts, though.
Nice touch.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't.
And why not, really? I mean,
yeah, I mean, she's bathing in her blood. Is it really a stretch that she's eating
take
them?
it that next step.
That she's snacking on a finger every once in a while.
If she's biting flesh off people, she might as well swallow.
No chicken wings. She's got servant fingers. Like just. So, oh my gosh, you guys were so dark. These are all secondhand accounts, so nobody's actually witnessed this. And bear in mind, this testimony is probably extracted under torture. So, like witch trials, they started to, they would make up all sorts of fanciful things to give more information, right? So, because they couldn't be verified, these testimonies, they kept investigating, which I actually think is pretty progressive for the 1600s. The fact that, like, it used to be you could walk in and be like, she put a curse on me. And they're like, that lady's obviously a witch. And that was evidence. And you're like, yeah, burn. So the fact that they actually were trying to find proof, I'm like, well done, Hungarians in the 1600s. Way to have some kind of rule of law there. Mind you, it is also a noble woman they're accusing. So they have to probably dot their I's and cross their T's and all of that stuff.
Well, and not just a noble woman, one of the most powerful women in all of Hungary.
Yeah,
she was
that's right.
Yeah. Very powerful.
Severe landholder, very wealthy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very wealthy.
So,
all those things. Yeah.
Dear cousin Count Thurzo continued his investigation, and one witness accused Bathory of killing 650 victims. Others gave different numbers. Thurzo himself interviewed 289 witnesses in total. 3 local pastors came forward to say that they had found bodies in the tunnels that connected the church to the castle. So at the time, castles always had like a church that would have been like part of their
Mhm.
domain and territory that was often attached, right? So tunnels underneath, I guess.
Mhm.
So this seems like more concrete evidence, right? When you've got pastors who are holy, therefore like slightly above suspicion, at least in this time, and having actual bodies that they can bear witness to. So Thurzo planned to imprison her in the monastery as a like temporary measure, but Elizabeth apparently threatened him, saying that she had the support of Gregory Bathory, the protectorate of the Bathory holdings. That was currently leading a pro-Turkish rebellion against the Habsburgs. So King Matthias would have been the Habsburg dynasty, which ruled like Western Europe for quite a while. And so
Mhm.
Thurzo kind of backed off at this time. So he decided not to take her to royal court. At this time, it's worth noting that the only way for a woman of Elizabeth Bathory's status, basically the only people that could actually bring her to trial would be her peers or higher, right? So that means it would have to be somebody of equal status. So her cousin is she's a countess. There's still some other layers to that, the wealth and status and land holdings. I feel like she actually might have had more power than her cousin, the count. Also, so
Mhm.
then like the next highest authority would be the king, could bring her to trial. But it also would have created a huge political scandal and cast some very serious shame on the Bathory name, sullied their
Yeah.
reputation. And as
Mhm.
we pointed out, there's a lot of really wealthy, powerful people behind this name that are deeply invested in not having the shame of her ongoings be brought to light.
Mhm.
So the motivation for actually bringing her to trial was small, small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so the other thing that Thurzo was considering, again, he's in relation to her, is that if he does bring her before the king, what happens that the king will just seize all of her holdings, right? He's going to take all of her wealth, all of her land, all of her castles, and so he is part of her family. He likely knows people that would benefit directly from her imprisonment and like gather her wealth. So they decided to kind of deal with it. Don't take her into the Hungarian court, but like keep her where she was and deal with it quietly among the family members.
Mhm.
So instead, they decided that they would need to catch her in the act if they wanted to seize her holdings and like actually have a case for imprisoning her and taking her wealth and her power. They needed to like have some concrete red-handed evidence. So December 29th, 1610, Grigory Thurzo and his men entered the castle through the tunnels, right? They go through the bottom. And apparently he hauled out bodies that were down there that she had discarded. And he brought them out and laid them in front of the countess. And he's like, you know, the proof. And so there was
Mm.
one that was apparently still alive. So she's not a body, actually. She's a human being. And they asked her who had done this to her. And she had pointed to Catalin, that was one of the servant women, and widow
Mhm.
Nadazdi. These two women, she had said, had tortured her and put tongs to her body and beaten her. So Elizabeth, when the servant pointed to these two women who had been the ones that were beating her, Elizabeth tried to claim that she was also afraid of her servants and that it was actually them that was doing all this, and she was just too scared of them to go against them.
Mhm.
She's like, poor me. So they seized Bathory's servants and interrogated them under torture. So there was, at the time, they seized 3 women and a man. The women were Ilona Jo, Dotroya Sventes, Fico was the man, and Catalin was so Ilona, Jo, Dotroya, and Catalin are the 3 women, and Fico is the man. So those were the
Mhm.
servants that they thought were complicit in the torture or of servants, and so they tortured them. And they quickly turned on each other, blamed each other for it, turned on the countess, and said that like they had nothing to do with the murders, but they were burying the bodies for her and helping cover up her crimes, and kind of pointing to each other. So they, of course, didn't torture the countess because we don't do that to the nobility. But in total, the numbers varied. So there was some that said anywhere from 36 to 51 victims, which is still like way less than the like 650 that they were claiming. But there is
Yeah.
apparently a diary somewhere that she kept the names of all her victims. That's where the number 650 comes from. But I don't know that they actually ever produced the diary. So whether or not that was actually evidence or again, just like a story. So they also pointed to a dead servant, Dravulia, who was like complicit with the Countess. Of course, she's not there. She's since passed. So there's no way to drag her up and get her to testify. They took them to court in January of 1611. So, they're starting to get tortured December 10th. I'm thinking this is a bad month for these poor people. Not going to court until January. And there was actually a jury of 14 people who listened to the testimony of the servants, who denied being responsible, but admitted burying bodies. And so ultimately they were found guilty of vampirism, sorcery, and celebrating pagan rituals. So like, I guess the blood piece,
Yeah.
finding bloodless bodies would have been vampirism.
Yeah.
So two of the women, Ilona Jo and Dorothea Sventes, and the man Fico, were tortured as punishment. So like after the sentence, they're tortured again after having probably already been tortured for a month. And then they were put to death. So like just immediately. The third woman, Catalin, was spared an immediate execution, and then her fate is unknown. So like she wasn't found innocent, but I think there was not enough evidence to like prove that she had actually participated. So they don't know what happened to her. And then there was another woman, Busorka of Majava. She was burned alive without even being questioned. I think I heard some mention somewhere of a witch. So I'm wondering if they suspected her, like she might have just been somebody in the village that they suspected of witchcraft and became tied into this, when they're accusing them of sorcery, because it doesn't sound like she worked in the castle or had any affiliation, but she was just randomly burned alive. Poor woman. So, of course, as a noblewoman, Bathory couldn't be executed like the peasants. So she was instead walled up in a single room in her castle. The windows were bricked over, and there was only a small hole for food to be passed through. So she had like basically one room, and that was her prison for the rest of her life.
Oh, I thought when I heard that she had been put in her castle, that she was allowed to roam the whole castle. Like I didn't know she got put into a room. Like that totally changes things. Because I was like, oh, poor Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Roaming around her massive castle.
I think that's one of the unsubstantiated pieces, though. They don't know for sure if it was just a room or if it was actually her castle.
Oh.
There's no hard fact around that, or evidence around that, I should say.
I do think it would have been a very cruel punishment, right? Like it would have been really awful. So this is 1611, don't forget. So she's apparently supposedly walled up in a room in her castle with just a hole for food. She wrote many letters appealing her conviction, but she never appeared to show any remorse for the death of the victims. Elizabeth Bathory was found dead on August 21st, 1614. So 3 years later, or 2.5 years later. So she didn't live very long in her castle. And of course, this caused a lot of speculation about what caused her death. Did she kill herself? Was she starved because she couldn't eat? Did somebody try to poison her? Was she like eliminated? And I wonder too about the inheritance of her holdings, like if actually her being alive limited what people could do with her land and titles and wealth, right? The fact that even if she's walled up in her castle. So her body was supposedly buried in the family crypt, but it's never been found. So they have searched for her body in the crypt, but they don't know where it is. So there's some speculation that she may have even escaped. And so now we're going to turn to Kori for like the potential fact versus fiction, truth behind all of this. What do we know as true and what is maybe total speculation?
My imagination's going right now, and I would love to think maybe one of her kids took her out.
Yeah, right?
Maybe they poisoned her to get their inheritance and just get it over with and move on with it.
Well, and if she had enough wealth, like it totally seems possible that she could have bribed somebody to get her out of there and stick her on a boat somewhere.
Oh, for sure.
Just go live in Spain for a while.
For sure.
So this story, there's a lot of inconsistencies in it. And there's pieces that I'm going to bring up to look at, myth versus reality that we didn't even touch on today with the stories that you've shared. But to think that that story is completely true would be just so disturbing. So I'm glad there's
yeah.
holes in it.
Mhm.
But also, we're really twisted to want to create such a horrific nightmare of a story, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what we hold on to. That's what actually feeds us in some way, you know? It's also
Yeah.
quite bizarre.
It's dramatic and
Yeah, we're a
titillating, and you're
little
like,
sadistic, all of us.
yeah, I'm
Yeah,
clutching my
yeah, we
pearls,
want to hear
guys.
the gore. Clutching your
Mhm.
pearls. All right. Okay, so there's a legend that says dark influences in Bathory's life. So there's a story about Bathory's aunt and uncle who taught her about Satanism.
Mm.
Did you guys
Mm.
catch any of that in
Mm-mm.
your research?
I didn't
No.
find that.
Yeah.
I did see references to witchcraft, which maybe is related, but
Yeah, yeah. In the early Renaissance Central Europe, belief in witchcraft and the occult was widespread. And while Bathory's crimes mere sadistic mutilations and murders, there's no record of this account as a primary source. Stories of her aunt and uncle's satanic influences appear in much later secondary or popular accounts. So
Mm.
historians regard this as an unsubstantiated rumor.
Mhm.
It's a good one, though.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then the thing with her exposure to violence in childhood, there are local stories that claim as a child, Elizabeth witnessed a peasant being punished for horse theft, and this peasant's stomach was slit open, and then the contents were sewn to a pig's belly before both were released to die together. Like that is gruesome.
Oh, that's
But
disgusting.
like somewhat believable. I mean, that seems pretty over the top. Like, wow, that's a lot of effort too.
Mhm.
But the punishments that were happening at that time were pretty grotesque.
Oh yeah,
Like
they're
hands were
barbaric.
chopped off, no problem.
Yeah.
People, yeah, like the punishment before the death was just highly unnecessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's no historical evidence she ever witnessed such a scene, but it captures how her legend began to intertwine with gruesome stories. However, there are reports her childhood did include exposure to harsh treatment, being from a noble family with power over peasants. So undoubtedly, she saw violence as part of her environment growing up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
and the
Oh
dehumanizing of
yeah, it does
peasants would
make
have been
sense.
an everyday thing. Like, it has to
Yeah.
be
Mm-hmm.
when you have people with no power and authority and people with unchecked power and authority, like
Yeah.
we know that the human nature takes over and it is not pretty, right? Like we know that that's the case. So I can't imagine she wouldn't have seen, like we're talking about her own kids, right? What did they see casually happening in
Mm-hmm.
the castle, even aside from like
Mm-hmm.
violent
Yeah.
tortures?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
desensitizing.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so on to the bathed in blood of virgins to preserve youth myth.
Mhm.
So something
What? It's not
Bathory is
true,
famous
Corey?
for is she's I mean, it makes a great story, right?
Yeah.
So something Bathory is most famous for is she supposedly thought that bathing in or using the blood of her victims would keep her skin young and youthful. So historians generally consider this to be a myth. No mention of bloodbaths appear in original trial records or original witness testimony. The first known texts that mention the bloodbath motif were written over a century after her death. Her actions resulted in the nickname of Blood Countess, as we've mentioned, and may have been a source of inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula, the story of Dracula, which, lovely.
Oh,
A woman inspired that.
interesting.
Well, we are in the Transylvania region.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
so
So, yeah,
interesting.
they do think this was the origins of it. So part of this folklore rose from Elizabeth incorporating noble girls in her repertoire of victims, as we mentioned. While nature was taking its course with the aging process, she upped her game in hopes that the noble blood would be more effective in recapturing her lost youth. So, yeah, we did touch on that. She went for a more expensive brand.
Yeah.
Why not? So her number of victims, so 600 to 650 or so. Many sources say she tortured and murdered hundreds of girls, or more. So official testimonies and documents are much less clear. Some witness statements are contradictory, of course. Modern estimates are more likely that way fewer were killed, so possibly even dozens rather than hundreds were murdered. Also, a diary listing the 650 names was never produced in trial records. So there's really actually no proof of any diary, all hearsay. But it makes for way more of a sensational story, doesn't it, if it's 650 plus
Yeah.
victims?
Well, and if somebody's getting tortured,
Yeah.
she might come up with
Well, I know.
650, right?
That's what I was going to
Good.
say. Is like under torture, you're
Yeah.
like, okay, I will. Yeah, I totally saw a diary. She wrote them all down. No, swear.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
stop
Oh,
poking
for
me with
sure.
hot
Yeah,
needles.
yeah,
Yeah.
with the interrogation.
Well, yeah, give
Absolutely.
them
I
something
know.
really
People would say
grand.
anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Totally.
So, okay, so her torture devices and techniques. So many stories include grotesque torture devices and supernatural cruelty. Trial records do talk of torture and abuses, often of servants, but not all the dramatic instruments are evidence. Some were likely later embellishments, so the Iron Maiden type of device did not appear in the prosecutor's original legal accusations. So it was more the mistreatment, like abuse, but the torture aspect wasn't substantiated within the trial period, if that makes sense. So again, the story grew bigger and bigger. What else do we got here? So her trial and conviction. So there's a common belief she was tried, found guilty, and punished accordingly. But in reality, her servants were tried and some were executed, but she was never formally tried. This wasn't unusual as she was a noble. She was, however, condemned to perpetual confinement in her chamber, as Jen mentioned. And again, that there's question whether she actually had free reign of her castle or a considerable section of it versus just the room. Again, there's no evidence of it. So as far as political, social, and conspiratorial motives, many historians argue that the case against Elizabeth Bathory was not purely about criminal justice, but rather shaped by intersecting political, social, and conspiratorial motives. Her arrest and allegations of murder and torture may have been influenced by those seeking to undermine her power. Surprise.
Yeah.
So, wealth and land. After her husband's death, Bathory became one of the most powerful landowners in Hungary, controlling significant wealth and estates. This made her a potential threat to both the nobility and the crown. And I think, Jen, you touched on that. King Mathis II is believed by some scholars to have owed money to the Bathory family, and her downfall may have offered a way to erase this debt and redistribute her lands.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
It sure does.
Gender norms. Her status as a wealthy, unmarried noblewoman with political influence also challenged patriarchal norms of the time. As a result, she may have been viewed with suspicion and hostility in a male-dominated society where powerful women were often targets of slander, especially during periods of political instability. Nobody wanted a woman in power. A religious and political conflict. So religious tension also played a role. The Bathory family had strong Protestant ties, while many of her accusers, including Thurzo, who led the investigation, were aligned with Catholic Habsburg interests. This added a layer of potential motivation, and the suppression of Protestant nobility was a key priority in the region at the time.
Yeah, the Catholic Protestant battles that were happening during this time in Europe were huge and pretty bloody. Like there's some pretty horrifying events that took place. And the Habsburgs were being challenged. They were being challenged at the time by the Turks. They would talk about her husband going and fighting the Turks. There were quite a few wars going on. And then I think a little bit later, maybe 10 or 15 years later, after following Elizabeth's death, they went to a war against Spain. There was, lots of political upheaval, and the Habsburgs were having a hard time holding on to their power. So money, influence, having a woman
Right.
in a position where she has political sway, she has a lot of land, she has a lot of wealth, and they can't necessarily control her, especially if she is slightly unhinged and mentally ill and just like This woman who is
Mhm.
torturing servants, if any
Yeah.
of this is true, I can't imagine them being, hey, could you use your influence? We need to send soldiers here. And she's like, real busy killing
Yeah.
people right now. Don't have time. Like I don't imagine she would have been easy
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
manipulate. So,
Mhm.
Well, yeah, because all of
Yeah,
that
for sure.
aside, she was a bit of a tomboy. She like would, practice fencing and horseback riding. Like she was so out of the realm of what a woman should be that I can see why she would be
yeah.
considered a threat because she was.
And super
Mhm.
smart. She was very smart, right?
I think that is probably one of the bigger
Mhm.
threats.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, judicial irregularities. Historians have pointed to significant irregularities in the legal process. Bathory was never given a formal trial, and much of the testimony against her came from servants and witnesses under duress or torture. These accounts were often contradictory or vague, raising questions about their credibility. Legend and sensationalism. As mentioned, the more sensational aspects of Bathory's legend, such as bathing in blood of virgins, only appeared decades after her death. These myths were likely spread through folklore, oral tradition, Gothic literature, distorting the historical record and creating a monstrous image unsupported by contemporary evidence. So, in light of these factors, many modern scholars view Elizabeth Bathory's case as a product of political power struggles, gender bias, religious conflict, and myth making, rather than clear-cut criminal guilt. So there you go.
There you
Yeah.
go.
So is there indication that she
Yeah.
did actually kill some people? Like, do we know if that's true?
I don't think we even know if that's true. There's indication that she was abusive and might have tortured, but I don't think there's actually hard evidence that there
She was a
was
murderer.
Yeah.
the
Well,
murdering
and
going on.
documentation in that time was
Wild.
incredibly poor. So there wouldn't have been a lot of things
Mhm.
documented about this to know what truly happened.
And again, she was protected because of her standing. So
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah. Still makes a good story though, right?
sure does.
Sure does.
Well, time has made it a really good story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. The legends, the myth,
Yeah.
all of it.
Well, I definitely wouldn't want to cross her path regardless.
No.
Yeah, just in case.
No, definitely not.
Just
Hard
in
no.
case.
Hard no. And not interested in trying the blood bathing to hold on to my youthful appearance.
No,
Yeah, definitely don't want to be
no,
working in her castle either. Like
rather
even as a
not.
servant, I'm like, no, thank you. Hard
No,
pass.
no,
Hard pass."
nothing to
No.
do with her. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That wraps up our telling of the story of the Blood Countess, Elizabeth Bathory, in the 1600s. I hope you enjoyed it, our little ghost story. I think there's a blend of historical truths, there's some myth and superstition that's attached to that. There's also definitely some sexism, some accusations that were false, torture would have been common at the time, right? That getting truth and looking at evidence that is untainted wasn't a thing at the time. They didn't have the same kind of criminal procedures that we do in our modern world. So it's interesting to look at cases like this and try to tease apart fact and fiction. And I think ultimately we will never know what the truth is to the story of Elizabeth Bathory, probably some nefarious doings and a whole bunch of elaborations and exaggerations on what she actually did and myth built around it.
Yeah.
So I hope you enjoyed it and thank you very much for listening. I hope you will like and subscribe and follow us on all of your podcast apps. If you find us on our socials, we have a YouTube account at Murder of Crones. We also have the social medias, Facebook, we are on Instagram, we're on TikTok. Give us a like and a follow. We love to hear from you and any of your thoughts and feelings about stuff that we've produced. And as I've said, please give us a review. 5 stars would be lovely. We would love it. Leave us a nice comment.
Love it.
If you didn't like it, please don't
And
comment.
tell your friends.
We have hurt feelings all the time, so don't hurt our feelings. Just move on. And yeah, if you do like it, share. Please spread the word. And that's it for us.
I would just like to thank Dennison Design for sponsoring us and allowing us to use this space. Dennison Design is a full interior design studio specializing in custom millwork and finishes. If you're looking to renovate, build, or simply update your cushions, they are the gals for you. And you can find them at www.denizendesign.com. Thank you for listening today, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.